Okay. Okay, so hello everybody. I'm here with the next Supreme Court Justice, um, April Wood. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing this evening,
Good.
Sloan?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So there's two spots up for Supreme Court. Is that correct?
That is correct. And both those spots will be on your November ballot. Only one is on your ballot in the primary.
Okay, only one in the primary. Good to know. Good to know. So the question I get most often from people, that I meet just out and about, who do you like for Supreme Court? Right, I get that. But in the education sector, they're asking me, why is Education First Alliance backing anybody on the court? Like, what does that have to do with education? And so the reason why I want to have you on is because I want you to kind of educate us on what kind of cases in education could end up at the Supreme Court in North Carolina.
Well, I think that most people know about the Leandro case. It's been out there for decades now. And it's a very famous case in North Carolina about children's constitutional right to a good, sound, basic education. And of course, it has evolved throughout the years into something, else, but it involves funding
Right.
and whether or not every school should have the same amount of funding, whether or not the children are receiving the same type of education regardless of what county they are in. We have 100 counties in the state of North Carolina, and some schools, because of where they're located, may have more funding than other schools, particularly in the more rural areas. And so there is a lot of litigation about what kind of funding should be allotted for children in the public school system. Of course, that really originally started back, I think, in 1974 with Granville County, a case that involved Granville County. But since then, of course, we now have Leandro. We've got other cases that involve vouchers and whether or not vouchers are constitutional or not. And children, your parents have a right to determine what kind of education their children receive. And so there's all kinds of cases that come before the Supreme Court because we in North Carolina are very unique in that we have in our North Carolina state constitution embedded within it a constitutional right to a sound basic education that's not found in some other state constitutions. And because of that, we have a lot of litigation revolving around that because parents obviously want their children to have a good sound basic education, and in North Carolina have a constitutional right to it.
So I explained the public schools this way. It's sort of like if you are accused of a crime, if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be provided for you. So, right, if you are, let's say that you're a single parent and you're working all the time and you don't have the means, you are entitled in this state, as you pointed out, to have a sound basic education. Or let's say, you're a foster child, you deserve the right to have a sound basic education. So for years and years, maybe even decades and decades, the Republican Party has been, school choice, that's all we advocate for, and we'll just leave the school system for the left, right? Well, anything and everything the left touches turns to pure crap. Look at Chicago, look at San Francisco, look at any city that's being managed or any municipality that's being managed by the left. It always turns to junk. So when we let the left kind of take billions and billions of dollars, have no accountability, and run something, it's just like running something into the ground. And the reason why I say that is it is demonstrably unfair to, let's say, working families, let's say foster children, let's say any parent that has a child in the public education system. Now we are starting to say, as reformers in the Republican Party in the education space, no, every child deserves more than a sound basic education, which they're not getting now, April. They're deserving of a world-class education, and the taxpayer deserves accountability and an ROI, right, for their money. And so that's why we as reformers, this is so important to us. So yes, I do see the Supreme Court where a lot of the cases that, I'm sorry, we're going to have to sue our way out of some of these bad policies will end up. And so some of the challenging issues that we're pushing now as reformers are things like all this gender crap that we see, and specifically, the question that's come before us is, do boys belong in the girls' bathrooms? I say no. You say no. But also, do boys belong on the girls' sports teams? Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, I don't know any of this stuff. And I'm telling you, you probably will answer this in your own way. But for people on the ground and for parents, this is very upsetting. So could a case like this possibly end up at the Supreme Court level?
It absolutely could end up at the Supreme Court level. So right now, there was a bill that was being presented to address gender in sports. And then, of course, it was pulled this term from the legislature. But there is, word that the legislature is going to address that again. And if that bill were to pass, then you could assure that there would be some sort of litigation that would follow after that. Of course, the basic issue is whether or not there's discrimination. And is there discrimination because you're treating boys different than girls? Or is it their discrimination because you're treating girls differently than boys, or you're trying to treat them the same, but they're not the same? I mean, there's a lot of issues that are surround that particular issue of gender in the sports. And I mean, we've got Title IX. There's federal regulations for Title IX and what all that entails, because there was a period of time where girls weren't allowed to participate in the same sports as boys. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are going to be discussed revolving that particular issue. And obviously, as a judge, I can't stake myself out in a particular situation, because then later there'd be motions for me to recuse myself because I've already, because I said what my position on that would be. So, obviously I'm not going to forecast how I would rule, but there is a lot of conversation that is surrounding that particular issue. And all I can say to that is I got a 20-year track record of being a constitutional conservative common sense judge.
Absolutely. No questions. Your decisions have been second to none. And I'll tell you, when it comes to Title IX, just for my audience, Title IX also has a prohibition against gender harassment. And I would argue, this is my argument, not anyone else's, I argue that it is gender-based harassment when you are in the locker room changing for a sport and you have to have a male next to you. I believe that that's harassment. So who knows, maybe a case or two will go up from that. But anyway, so you're talking about the Save Our Girls in Sports Act. Another bill that was similar to that was a bill that Senator Ralph Hise from 47 put up, and I believe it was in 2020, but it would prevent surgeons from castrating children. Yeah, and ruining them and mauling them, their genitals in transgender surgeries. Now that might be something else that would come up. That hopefully that bill will come back up, because it does something else. What it does is it makes sure that if children decide to change their gender inside of school, and I know this sounds crazy, April, you probably don't know all this stuff going on, but I'm so close to it. Now teachers are grooming children to change their gender. And then when children say, hey, I want to change my gender, parents are kept out of the equation. That seems to me like it's going to be a legal issue. That could end up in the court, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Because, parents have a constitutional right to the care, custody, and control of their children unless they have abused or neglected their children. So that is absolutely a constitutional issue. There is such a thing in North Carolina called, parental waivers, where young ladies can go and ask a judge to give them permission to make their own decisions regarding abortions. Obviously, that's something that involves the court system. And that has been a source of litigation as well, because when do you take the parents out of the equation? When is that appropriate? And obviously, the only way to do that for the medical professions is with, a court order. But the reality is parents still have that constitutional right to the care, custody, and control of their children. And they need to understand that they shouldn't be willing to give up that right for any reason, because once you lose a right, it's incredibly hard to get it back.
What you just said is very important. Once you lose a right, it's hard to ratchet down. You can ratchet up the taking of rights, hard to ratchet down. And so that's why, The Supreme Court level is important, not just for, establishing your rights, right? But preventing government overreach. And that's a huge role of the court is, there's a lot of, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle people are on, there's a lot of overreach, whether it's making law, whether it's enforcing it, or going beyond the legislative intent on some of these laws.
Oh, absolutely. And, Sloan, there's been some talk out there and about in the public about conversations that involve whether or not parents should actively be involved in their children's education, or whether or not everything should be left up to the teachers. And if the teachers are the ones that enroll, since they do have the children for many hours a day, my position, of course, would still be parents have a constitutional right to the care, custody, and control of their children. And that includes making the education decisions for their children.
Well, what you're doing right now is every time I throw something out there and I want the audience to pay attention, what you continuously do is point out the Constitution. This is what it means to get a judge that has strict adherence to the Constitution. This is what a constitutional conservative is. No matter what I'm saying, you're bringing it back to the rights that we're granted in the Constitution, and nothing more than that. And so that's what a strict interpretist does. So, you're running against a guy, he's a fine fellow, but here's my commentary on him. He's a law professor at UNC. And I have to tell you, I think everyone knows this. If you're swimming around in a fishbowl, you're a product of the environment, right? You're touching the water, you're touching other fish, you're touching the food, blah, blah. UNC is, bar none, the most radical far left school in the Southeast. I mean, it's unbelievable. At one point, I think a couple years ago, it was one of the top 5 anti-Semitic schools as well. And so even if you go in, you're a conservative, right? And you're a professor and you teach there, et cetera, you've been swimming around in that fishbowl for so long, you're going to get the byproducts of it. So this guy has been a professor. He has never sat on the bench, you guys, never. So a case like what we have, the transgender one, for instance, comes up. I am not confident that guy can make the right choices. He hasn't been interpreting the Constitution long enough to do that. You've been on the bench for 20 years. You've been doing it. We know how you're going to react. April, cases like this are too darn important to leave to chance.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Now's not the time to gamble with our courts.
Oh, no. You've got government overreach, and now we have corporate overreach. I mean, the stuff look at what Disney's doing. I mean, we could, you could have the legislature sanction a company and say, we're not going to play ball. And that company could sue, and that could end up in the Supreme Court also. I mean, so we have so many things that we need to be protected from now, as far as overreach and infringing on our civil rights.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the North Carolina Supreme Court is the final say on what the law in North Carolina is and what the North Carolina Constitution means. So we have to have good conservative judges at the North Carolina Supreme Court that are going to adhere to the rule of law and also going to interpret and apply the Constitution as it's written.
Right. We cannot take a gamble. We've taken gambles in the past, and we are where we are. And look, I got to tell you, when running up against a Democrat in the fall, they're going to make mincemeat of someone who has not had any judicial experience. I don't care if you throw millions of dollars in a race. If the product isn't what it needs to be, you can't win.
Well, and in North Carolina, we are at the position where we have more unaffiliated voters than we have Democrats or Republicans. And it's been my experience that a lot of those unaffiliated voters do their research before they go to the polls and vote. So if they do that and they learn that you've got on one hand someone who has been at the Court of Appeals and at the Supreme Court on the Democrat ticket, and then on the other hand you've got someone who's never been a judge and has limited legal experience, who do you think they're going to choose? So that is one of the reasons why I'm running as well, is because I've got a 20-year track record of being a constitutional conservative common sense judge, but I've got 18 years of experience as a trial court judge. And now I am an appellate court judge. And the reality is, the Democrat opponent doesn't have any trial court judicial experience. He's got appellate court experience, but so do I. And even though he's been there a while and is close to retirement, I've been a judge longer than him. So I've got the ability to put my experience up against his and to be able to talk to the unaffiliated voters and explain to them, look, I've got experience on the trial court and on the appellate court. And why is that important? And the reason that's important is because almost all the appeals that come to the appellate courts come out of the trial courts. And there's just no substitute for hands-on judicial experience.
Well, absolutely. And for 22 years old, you've got a lot of experience in this.
Thank you, Sloan. I wish that I was that.
I mean, so you have a lot of experience, and experience does count, and it counts for conservatives because we are we're tattered rhinos. I mean, we've been winning elections for the past 20 years here in North Carolina, but we're losing the state. How does that happen? It happens from getting the wrong people into office, whether it's, the school board, to the county commissioners, even to the mayors. We know, the state house and beyond. And so that does apply to the court. I mean, we've seen the Supreme Court, right? When we get someone in that there's no experience that we know of, right, on the Supreme Court, how they've ruled, et cetera, and their cases, and we're making a pretty good chance. But again, when you're in a fishbowl and you're swimming around, this is a perfect example of the Supreme Court. Watch John Roberts, fine for the first 2 years and then completely fell off the cliff. You're a byproduct of your environment. Your environment has been constitutional conservatism all of your life. It has been holding your own. And every role that you've had, you've done it. You haven't gone to the dark side, if you will. So,
no, I think that my parents might strangle me had I did that too, because I was reared in a God-fearing, Bible-believing Christian conservative home. So I have great conservative roots, and and that really has given me a great foundation upon which to build.
Well, it's funny because I grew up in a left-wing home and I was a leftist, and I had a battlefield conversion in 2001. But the way that I run my house, converts can be zealots, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you know how it is. And so, know the Constitution, know what it is. I mean, and as far as legislating, I mean, conservatives should never enact a law that doesn't extend the liberty of the citizenry. We don't need more laws. We need the ones on the book enforced. We need it whittled away, is what we need. And so, I hope that we get more real constitutional conservatives in positions of leadership, because you're right. We need them more than we've ever needed them before.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Our Constitution was formed to be a limit onto government, not keep expanding government. We haven't learned that lesson because we keep expanding our government. We need to get back to our constitutional roots.
Well, here's the issue, and we've learned this after the pandemic. We've learned this from so many different things. If the government can do something for you, it can do something to you. People need to wake up and understand that the government is not here to help you, right? Insofar as it's going to be creating policy that would redound to your benefit, right? Because if it can give to you, it can also take away, or what's worse, have strings attached. It's not a good habit to get into, which is why we here at EFA, we're looking to shred the size of the DPI, Department of Public Instruction, by 50%. That would be in government, in scope, and in employees, and other things, because we've seen that big faceless, nameless bureaucracy, they're accountable to no one, and they're abusing civil rights at warp speed. I mean, and a lot of times we feel like they're lawmakers out here, April. They're making us sue. They're leaving us to fend for ourselves, right? They've made all of these laws, and I hope we get back to sanity soon.
Well, you are certainly one of the best warriors out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As are you. And I know that both of us look forward to, oh, I don't know, about 9 p.m. on Tuesday.
Well, I am excited about Tuesday. I just hope that everybody who has not already voted during early voting gets out to vote. It is imperative that they go to the polls and vote on Tuesday, on election day. Right now, I think we're at incredibly low rates, depending on what counties you're looking at, 18 or 20% voter turnout. That's abysmal. It is not just your right to be able to vote, it is your duty as an American citizen to vote. And you need to vote every single time you have the opportunity, whether it's in a primary, special election, or general election. So I hope everybody makes a plan to vote on election day, which is Tuesday, May the 17th.
That's right. A vote like your life depends on it, because it kind of does. I'm not going to lie.
The future of our state is on the ballot this year, and in so many races it's on the ballot in the primary. A lot of races will be decided in counties across North Carolina during the primary.
Absolutely. 100%. Well said. And thank you for stopping on the campaign trail to talk to us, to educate our listeners about all this. And again, April Wood, and it's not enough for you to vote on Tuesday. You've got to share this video with 10 people, and you've got to tell 10 people to go out to vote. Look, even if you have to pick them up, go. Not only bring yourself, figure out who else can I bring to the poll. You have to do it, because I bet you if somebody had a ride, they'd go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell them to vote for April. I mean, hell, I'll go. I mean, I'm already going to go. But I mean, if you give me a ride, all right, I'm asking for a ride for myself. If anyone out there can give me a ride, let me know.
I was gonna say, Sloan, if you need a ride, I'll come get you and make sure you get a ride.
Come to Holly Springs, help a sister out, please. But it's more fun to go with, go in the morning, get some coffee, bring some people, but vote.
That's right. And don't forget, I am on the Supreme Court race, seat number 5. There's only 3 statewide judicial races, 1 for the Supreme Court, 2 for the Court of Appeals. And so I will be near the top of the ballot under Senate. If you have a congressional race, I will be under the congressional race. So make sure you look for April Wood's second name on the ballot. Please vote for me, April Wood, to remember to make the court good and vote for Judge Wood.
Make it good, vote for Wood. What? But tell me this, are you on the front or the back of the ballot?
I will be on most ballots. I should be on the front, because they'll have a Senate race, and then they will have a congressional race if there is a congressional race in that particular district. And then the next race will be the Supreme Court race.
Okay, so April Wood, we got it. All right, guys, thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for chatting with us, April, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Sloan, and I hope you have a great evening. God bless you.
You